Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, October, what's today, 18th edition of the SIG Cluster Lifecycle self-hosting and HA breakout meeting. We had just gotten started but hadn't started recording, so I think, Jamie, if you can re-say everything you just said in the last 3 minutes, that would be awesome.
Right. We were just going over, we wanted to sort of enumerate the potential blockers of using, or the potential issues of using the etcd operator. And I said that there were sort of two right now. One was technical, and one was more of a sort of conceptual design issue. The technical problem should hopefully be solved in 1.8 or 1.9. And the technical issue is the way that the etcd operator sort of manages the cluster every time it scales up and down is that it manually deploys a pod. So it needs to communicate with the Kubernetes API and then sort of manually manage the pods in the cluster. The problem is that by the time it initiates that process, when it first boots, on a kubeadm cluster, we don't have CNI installed, and we can assume that CNI is installed. So the problem is that all of the worker nodes that the pods can be scheduled to are not ready. So basically, the etcd operator creates the pods, but they remain unscheduled. They just stay in pending forever. And somebody actually added a new scheduling feature to 1.8, and it should be working by 1.9, which adds more granular taints and tolerations. So basically, when we boot a new kubeadm cluster, and then we add a node and we haven't installed CNI, we can still schedule workloads to that worker as long as we have that granular toleration set on the pods. So that's something like brand new. It doesn't actually work, I don't think, in 1.8. I tried to test it, and I think someone has contributed a bunch of fixes to try and get that working for 1.9. So that was the technical issue. And then Lucas also was a bit sort of skeptical about us coupling ourselves to sort of a third-party vendor, and then bringing that into kubeadm core. So that was the sort of conceptual issue there. So maybe Lucas, do you want to sort of talk more to that second point?
So it's all about GoDep, right? The etcd operator links in Kubernetes, and it's a circular dependency. So we might be able to work around it, but
I think we
won't probably be straightforward.
So in terms of the dependencies, so I remember somebody, I think it was Jordan, he basically called that out in the initial pull request, and he said, because kubeadm isn't in its own repo, it doesn't have full control of it, the dependencies it gets to use. So I think the only packages we needed to use the etcd operator is some structs, some types. So the workaround was just to redeclare those in our own code base for the time being until we move out into our own repo, and then we can fully install the dependency. But so the pull request doesn't need anything installed in GoDeps. We can just redeclare the types.
So isn't there a security issue too? I'm just trying to enumerate the potential list of problems, because the certs, in order for them to be running on the cluster, have to be stored on the cluster. They're not stored on the host machine. So isn't that the third killer one that kind of puts a fork in it? Just so we at least enumerate it and we can check it off the list.
Yeah, so I haven't thought about this one. So do you mean that basically, if I have a TLS encrypted etcd cluster, the certs need to reside in the pods themselves? Is that what you mean, or?
They need to reside as a secret on the cluster, and secrets aren't secret enough.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main problem. Also, we have.
So I haven't thought of this, but isn't we run into the same problem when we have the API server talk to etcd anyway, right? Because it needs to have those certs in a secret in order to access etcd.
It's not in a secret. It's on the host.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so the counter proposal for storing secrets is using a custom type, some kind of CRD, put them there in order to have have it not granted by default by ingress controllers, for example. So you can just pawn your ingress controller and you have write access to etcd. So instead, we'll use the CRD that will basically store up byte blobs and with the certs that will be downloaded to host part then when run. But yeah, also with the etcd operator, we need the network, like IP tables level checkpointing, right?
Yeah, right. So I actually asked some of the CoreOS team about like the necessity for that, and they seem to be of the opinion that it wasn't just for the etcd operator that's required. They said it's generally a requirement for self-hosting. I personally don't have an opinion on that, but I think that's part of a wider self-hosting discussion, whether we need to checkpoint IP tables.
So I do have another use case on the issue of like addressing the masters from a node point of view. We might be able to reuse the kube proxy with some, like if we have IP tables checkpointing on this kind of level, we can use the proxy as the load balancer locally.
So I kind of detest the notion of IP tables checkpointing just because of how it's implemented and the notion that we might even go away from it in the future, right? And you know, and there's other options too that exist for other proxying and like mesh network solutions that might just completely eliminate that dependency entirely, right? So it's very thorny, and I think if they have a hard requirement on that feature, I think we've enumerated enough features to say, okay, we've done our due diligence. Let's go on to option B, which is let's do static pods, but now we need to own the life cycle, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to record it for posterity, and then I know Fabrizio has a comment in here about the two docs. But what we should probably do after this meeting is take this information that I've kind of that I've started to enumerate in this doc and put it in our HA unification doc, and then commit that sucker to the kubeadm repo, right?
Yeah, too many docs. Do you see the changes I made now? Basically, I was offline earlier. Now that some minutes ago got online, it should have updated it for you.
I see a bunch of updates in the document. Yes.
Yeah, or actually suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I kind of tried to go through the doc earlier today while on the plane. Yeah, so
basically the next steps are to enumerate potential blockers for solution A, which is the operator, into the doc, right? And then are we going to iterate on that doc and then submit that? So the decision will be made in the doc, is that right? Or
well, I guess the decision will be made in these meetings, but it will be highlighted and clarified in the doc.
Yep. Yeah. So why don't we talk about option B, which is the one that you proposed in your other document originally, Lucas?
Yeah.
With let's try to poke holes in that one, and then just say like pick option A or option B and go with it, right? Like we need to just go now at this point.
Yeah. So the counter proposal to using the etcd operator is to deploy etcd as static pods. And this has better security and basically assumes we're choosing the CRD approach for storing secrets. Also storing certificates.
But we're not storing them, right?
Well,
we're only
temporarily we're uploading them, and
we're only doing that so that when you're doing a join, the other master can download it from a well-defined location.
Yeah.
And then after that period of time, they can. How's the handoff going to occur? Because unless you know the number of masters, how do you know when to delete that thunk? or when that func gets deleted?
We'll basically document like this is a kubectl command. This is the command to run to delete the stop bootstrapping or something like that. We might even consider a kubeadm face aj something command. Anyway, so the good thing with the static pod etcd thing is that we kind of own the secure certificate generation process, and this will be done via the controller manager, right? The CSR signer and CSR approver. The problem is that we don't want a kubelet client cert that is aimed to be talking to the API server to be able to talk directly to etcd. In the same manner, we don't want the etcd peer cert, or we don't want anyone but etcd to be able to peer etcd. So, and using a different CA would be great, like for an etcd just for CA just for etcd. But again, then we can't use the dynamic mechanism of generating new certs on the fly, because the CSR signer doesn't support multiple CAs as far as I know, which is one thing we might want to improve. But yeah, the problem is upgrades, right? We have, let's say we were able to create this new AJ cluster. It's a shiny thing, etcd static pods. We then upgrade to 1.10 of Kubernetes, which bundles etcd 3.2. And well, what do? We could do something like deploy a job or a daemon set or something that mocks with static pod files and some way coordinates, but it all gets really messy. So
here's the question too. Like, it gets weird because like etcd is fundamental to the control plane, right? And there's a lot of tooling that already exists.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to maybe make a little very myopically focused tool that only does the etcd upgrade? Because right now, a lot of the other pieces of the upgrade process say punt, right? Like we won't handle this as part of kubeadm upgrade, or you should launch this other piece because it's potentially dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be pretty mindful of doing an etcd upgrade, and you should do it in a controlled fashion. So
just to respond to that, like it ties into like the way one of the ways I think about this problem is that, you know, when it comes to all of the things that we expect kubeadm to sort of deploy an etcd cluster and what that cluster has the capacity of doing, you know, it needs to be able to be flexible, scale up and down. It needs to be secure, and it also needs to be easily upgradable. In my right, or maybe not easily upgradable, but just.
But anyway, I mean, these are the requirements we're trying to play with, and right. It's far from straightforward.
Right, but my point is that, in my opinion, like there is already an existing solution that delivers the vast majority of those requirements, in my opinion. And like in terms of like the, you know, like the potential security issue, the way that we are sort of trying to solve that with CRDs, I'm wondering whether we can, because like this issue of like where we store certs, it's going to be a solvable it's something that we're going to have to solve for every kind of form factor of etcd, right? I mean, not necessarily just the operator, but also if we want them on static pods. So I'm just kind of wondering whether we can decouple that problem of security from the form factor of etcd. So, you know, if we do use CRDs, maybe we could use CRDs to deploy the peer certificates to other nodes and then use etcd operator or static pods. That's a choice for the user, right? But like, I like the idea of using CRDs because it sort of securely sets up a node to host etcd, right? but I think that's slightly orthogonal from what is the form factor of etcd, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, so just what I have now, like on a high level, what I had in the doc was kubeadm init sets up etcd client cert, and one etcd client cert for the API server, right? And one etcd peer cert for the initial node, right? This is a single node. We upload the common certificates to the CRD, and that's basically the first master initialization. Then we do the bootstrapping of the second master. We first get the CRD. We download all the common certs. Then we generate new ones from the CSR signing, CSR approver thing, right? Unique for this master 2 with the right sans and all that. Then we, in the same manner, we generate a unique etcd peer cert with the right sans again. Then what was the last step? Yeah, so we have to tell the etcd in the initial etcd instance that, well, I now have 2 nodes, 2 instances, right? So then we do a member add something with the client certificate, and then we can start the second etcd node or member, and then that's fine. Having 2 etcd instances running is okay. You won't get any extra failure tolerance, but you will eventually, well, you should add a third node so you get quorum and have a failure tolerance of 1. So, but again, I'm not exactly sure, because I think the current proposal there falls on the kubelets being able to talk to etcd due to some. Well, I have to check up how granular etcd can be. Well, how advanced the authorization features of etcd are.
So I understand your workflow for initialization, but the problem that's going to happen too is people are going to want to manage the life cycle of this. And they're going to want to add and remove members and scale up and scale down and do some rotation. And that's where things get really weird, right? Because once we own, that's why I'm starting to think in my head of having a separate tool that just does this life cycle aspect. But part of that separate tool is the etcd operator. So this weird, it's part of this weird, chicken egg problem where we keep going in a circle, in part because there are tools that already exist specifically for this purpose. But there's aspects of it that I don't agree with, right?
Yeah. I mean, so my 2 cents is that, I completely agree with everything that Tim just said. I'm very wary of trying to solve the same problems that somebody else has already, well, maybe not perfectly solved, but to a good degree solved, in my opinion. And I don't know, it's like, do we have enough bandwidth to not only code this brand new tool that does the same thing as something else, but also maintain that over the next few years, as well as all of our other work for kubeadm. We don't have that many active contributors for kubeadm, so I'm just wary of us taking on an potentially enormous new project with that kind of scope,
Yeah, that's also my worry.
Lucas, if I can add also my opinion.
Absolutely, thanks.
We are kind of discussing if to reinvent the wheel, because there is already a tool that does etcd management, and the tool is done by the same guys that does etcd. So we are kind of staying on the same brand. And for me, is the solution that we can start building upon, saying that if we find some limit, some problem with solution, we can provide, we can document them, and we can open a discussion with CoreOS to improve a TCD operator. For me, this is let me say the most simple solution also to explain, because putting in place let me say a startup procedure for transforming a static pod into an etcd cluster, and then start thinking to upgrade the scenario and so on and so on. It is really complex from my point of view. If I have to give my vote, is to go for the etcd solution, etcd operator solution, and deal with the limitation of this solution that is provided by CoreOS.
Yeah, Robert, do you know any status update of Mike had some kind of proposal which is kind of exactly the same thing I was thinking of 3 months ago, with an authorizer that could be able to deny like no matter what. I'm not sure where the issue is or something.
Yeah, so Mike took a proposal to SIG auth for, I can't remember what we call it. It's like a explicit deny or something. So
yeah.
Historically, authorizers had basically a accept, which would stop the authorizer chain, or a I don't care, which would allow you to go to the next thing in the authorizer chain. The second one we called deny, but it wasn't actually deny. It was really I don't care. And so he's adding a third state, which is explicit deny. And so as you're walking down the authorizer chain, if you get an explicit deny, you will stop walking down the chain and deny the request. So I think that got approved by SIG auth, and he's got the code for it, and it should be in 1.9, which is important to get the chain set up in the correct order, starting at 1.9.
Yeah, so I'm basically...
What is this in reference to? Like, why do we need that new authorization feature?
Yeah, so we need it for, well, if we could get that along with the getting the node authorizer to GA, which will include some granular taint and node labeling restrictions, we basically have most security features we need for thanks. We have basically the most security features we need for being able to self-host like CoreOS does with secrets. I mean, if we had that, we could make this authorizer that would explicitly deny all like cluster secrets to anyone requesting it, except for our special credential goes here. And also we could make it impossible for, with the node authorizer improvement, to like automatically graduate from I run kubeadm join as a node, and then I just, right now nodes can mutate the spec. So if I could like add my node, my new master taint, I could just get access via the node authorizer to these secrets, right? But if we restricted that on a node authorizer level, I can't change my taint, I can't change my labels. Then we'd solve that issue as well, which is basically as secure as the CRD, in my opinion.
So I'm just, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I want to take a quick pause for a moment, because it seems like kubeadm's mantra was to be the ease of use scenario, right? And it's not necessarily to be the most secure. Security is an important aspect, but if I was doing the most secure thing, I would have a separate Ansible script and a totally separate etcd cluster, and I would never self-host etcd. And I'd have my CA set up properly configured, right? So I'm not going to like even pretend like this is going to be the most secure option, but it should be the most user-friendly, right? If a person, I mean, these are the trade-offs we're going to have to weigh. It's like, and if we don't sort of say, cut the bar and say, provide that option to sort of say, like, you can have your external etcd, we will absolutely support that. But if you don't have that configured, or you don't have the tooling for that, then we will have this default option for you. And the default option should prefer ease of use over the most secure environment if we have to do a trade-off, right? Does that seem like a legitimate way to weight this?
Jamie, please.
Yeah, no, I just want to say yes, first of all, but just to quickly return to like the security issue. So hypothetically, say we were to run the etcd operator on master nodes, is it fair to say that every master node would have a copy of the etcd certs locally on the host?
So in the same way as secrets work today, the kubelet fetches, well, the node authorizer grants the kubelet access to the secret. It fetches the secret to a tempfs and mounts it automatically into the pod.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
I'm just, yeah, okay. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I was just wondering, like, when a new master is set up, does it have local copies of the certs on disk? It doesn't sound like it does.
No, so the kubelet, the benefit would be that the kubelet would handle that. It also would make search rotation easier eventually.
Okay.
On the issue Tim was bringing up, I do think security is really important. I mean, there are ways to lock. I mean, there are ways to lock kubeadm clusters down. But again, we do have the node token thing. I mean, the token isn't that long. It probably could be brute forced pretty easily. I don't know. Like if you have a really powerful machine and execute. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I do agree with Tim. I think the secret without having this authorizer might be, or at least 2-3 months ago, it was a deal breaker for me. Now, in the light of like lack of progress, I might be willing, and when having a promise that like Mike is working on this, this feature might make beta or might make 1.9, and yeah, then I think it probably would be fair. Do we know, has CoreOS like officially blessed the self-hosted etcd thing?
So yeah, I think so. So it's been part of Bootkube for a while now, and Bootkube is part of the Tectonic installer, which is what they deploy all of their internal Tectonic clusters with. So I think, yeah, all of their enterprise Tectonic stuff, I could be completely wrong, but I assume it's been self-hosted for a long time, including etcd, which is handled by the operator. So yeah, I can double check. But I think it.
Yeah, I just know that it's probably a half a year ago or something. It was still in like considered alpha and only in Tectonic like really experimental clusters, but it might actually have made its way into production clusters as well.
It says the project status is beta.
Yeah, so it might be sort of worthwhile just syncing with them and finding out what their graduation criteria is and what are their current doubts about making it fully stable right now. So that could be interesting to put our discussion into context too.
Yeah. So if we had this thing while in alpha, Tim, would you agree on using the kubeproxy to do the load balancing initially? I mean, it is IP tables, yes, but I guess it will take quite some time until we have this in production anyway. So until that, IPVS has probably graduated to beta, maybe default. Then we can like reconsider. But anyway, that would make us have something concrete at least, and not saying like, well, go with your own load balancer.
I wanted to maintain the focus of this to like at least make a decision on etcd first, and then we can talk about the masters second. I don't know if how does this sound? Let's table that topic for like 5 minutes from now, and let's make a decision on this one here. I feel uncomfortable in owning the lifecycle management of etcd if we were to do static pods, knowing that a person, if they really care about really high level security, they're going to do it their own anyways, right?
And that's where kubeadm phase is coming in, right? So you could reuse some of kubeadm to do the generic pods, and then use external CD or whatever external CAs.
Yeah. So I think having a default option of the operator, knowing the certain limitations that we have, but working with CoreOS to get some of the other bits out of the way seems like a reasonable approach to me, because that gets us out of lifecycle management, which I don't want to do for some other pieces, right?
I don't think anyone is excited about managing the etcd lifecycle, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean that's why we have an operator, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So would it be default? So my assumption is that we would carry on using static pods as the default, and we would gate the operator behind. It would be like an alpha feature, which is properly gated.
Yeah, just to be clear, everything here will stay behind the feature gate AJ through.
Yep.
At least for like 2 cycles or something.
Right.
At least for 1 cycle, if we get something in for 1.9. I don't think the coding actually is that hard. I mean, we have self-hosting with secrets. Myself and Andrew worked on that last cycle. So most of that code is done. We need checkpointing. We need the operator. Jamie has the operator work in progress PR. It's probably has to be rebased and stuff. It's pretty, yeah. But yeah.
I think as long as it's rebased and hidden and behind a feature gate, I am totally cool with this, right? Like I have no problems with moving forwards on that front. And if we come across an obstacle, we can always backtrack and punt, right? Like there's
we can always revert, and we don't have to promise anything at this stage, which is good. And so both myself and Jamie are subscribed to the taint toleration issue on 1.8. Did you receive any further feedback?
So I don't think it's going to be cherry picked. So there's a series of commits that fix that new scheduling feature. So basically it's in master. So I think for testing, I just need to build my own Hypercube image and then kind of test locally with that based on master. And then hopefully we have enough time to close the loop if it's still not working.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should be backported to 1.8. That's a lot of risk, and doesn't give us any extra value really. If it's in master, then it's perfect. That would mean that your PR is unblocked, kind of, right? Because that was the blocker the last time.
Yeah. Theoretically, there could be a bunch more, but yeah. So I think next steps are to like rebase everything, because like now we have phases. That's going to be a lot of work to rebase, and then testing locally using a custom built Hypercube image and just verify that things work end to end. Obviously feature gated too. So
then what else? I mean, I strongly think we should be in touch with SIG on these things. I could ping Jordan later today on Slack, even, and ask what the status is for the node authorizer to GA. I think it was planned for 1.9. And do we have Mike? Maybe we could ping him on SIG Cluster Lifecycle Slack. Yeah, anyway, I think, well, if we have the promise to at least consider these features and obfuscate this heavily, after this discussion, it's probably the best and fastest route forward.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I was wondering about the node not ready issue. Is this an issue only if we install the etcd operator before the networking? I'm right?
It's any kind of pod. Well, so when a node is not ready, well, when the CNI network is not set up, right now the full node status goes not ready, and when the node condition is not ready, the scheduler doesn't even consider that node for scheduling. So we're ending up in this loop where we can't schedule a new pod because the scheduler filters out the only node that exists there, right? And we don't have CNI, so the node is not ready. With the new granular taints, we can tolerate this behavior that, well, I'm fine with getting on a node that has no network. I can handle that. Basically opting into such circumstances. And that unblocks that using that CD operator.
Yeah, we also ran into this like when we needed daemon sets. I think was it the DNS server? Like
Yep.
we couldn't schedule it, so we used the daemon set to bypass the scheduler, basically.
Yeah, for self-hosting the controller manager and scheduler.
Sorry, I go back to the program because I was wondering that one of the key of the HA proposal is that the user can start from a single node and then other nodes. Theoretically, this means that we can have also a node which is started with a previous version of kubeadm that have an etcd which is based on the static pod. So in our path, we have kind of adopt also those kind of cluster. That means that we can eventually think that we install the etcd operator when the second node joins. I don't know if this makes sense. I was totally confusing.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. What do you say, Tim? It might make sense. Then with Gate, like you have to install a pod network before you can add your second master.
Can you repeat the question in its entirety? I only caught part of it.
Basically, what I was thinking is that we start the first master like we are doing now, so without the etcd operator. The etcd operator kick in when we are adding the second master.
That seems totally legit. The original document actually had a bootstrapped etcd, and then it did a pivot, right? So the original document was that you have the original laydown of kubeadm init as normal, and only on the second master join do you start to do the deployment and then the pivot of the operator.
Yeah. Thanks. That we should definitely consider that. We should have before as well. Yeah, but okay. So key takeaways from so far. We'll use the etcd operator. We'll use secrets. We'll try to lock secrets down as much as possible. It won't be the most secure option in the world, but it will hopefully be the most user-friendly thing out there. We might pivot on the first master. We might pivot from local etcd to self-hosted etcd on the first master pivot, first master initialization, or we might do it, as Fabrizio said, on the second one. The second one would remove the issue with the CNI not ready thing. Then we could. So I mean, that's all agreed on, kind of, right now. I mean, I'm not saying we should rip out the earlier things that were there, but I do think we need to slim down the doc a lot in order to make it readable.
Yeah, we can slim down the doc, and we can also trim out, say, like we propose this other option and has these faults, and then just nix it, right? Like the doc doesn't need to outline all the details, right? Like we can just punt on like saying here's some background information. We don't need to outline all the taxonomy and everything's inside there, right?
Yeah, and then we'll work with Cigar to improve the secret situation. And the last thing, we could easily use the kube proxy to update its own endpoint. So basically, we'd talk to 10.96.0.1 on the worker nodes, and kubeadm join for a node would write the initial IP tables rule in the same way as the kube proxy would. Kubelet starts talking to one endpoint of the API server. The kube proxy goes live, notices that, oh, now the Kubernetes service has 3 endpoints, and rewrites, like updates the local IP tables rule, and then the new reconciler keeps track of what API servers are living, and that automatically propagates to all nodes in the cluster. And then we'll just see what happens with IPVS or whatever in the future, or we might. I mean, the other option is basically to build our own controller that does the same thing. But the downside there is we actually have to agree on a VIP, and we have to write a new controller that is like 90% the same as kubeproxy. So, yeah, what do you think? That would be an option to. I mean, it wouldn't take that much coding effort, and it might just work. I haven't tested it, so I have no idea. But theoretically, I think it should.
So I'm totally cool with experimenting behind an alpha feature gate. So, yeah, like if you want to experiment with the idea of how to load balance the master connections, I think that's totally fine, so long as the default configurations for load balancers are all plumbed all the way through, and they are right now, right? You can override and specify the single endpoint, and it gets propagated through to the nodes, right? So all of that tooling is there. So I like the idea of experimenting and see what happens, but I don't. It's not. I wouldn't consider it like blocking or critical path for this release, right? For high availability. Like if we have an operator in place for initial things, and we want to cut like an alpha bit, we could say like, here's the constraints that we have currently for this version of high availability for this release.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's fair. But if we don't get this, then the story is like
You need a load balancer.
it's well, yeah. So then you don't get the full like out of the box experience. But yeah, if it's due to time constraints, that's probably fine. I mean, we can't do more than we are able to.
Yeah, I think I'm not opposed to it, but I think what we should do to like, there's been multiple proposed ideas around how to handle this, and I don't like any of them really. Like, it all has this feeling of like, it's just one of those hard problems where there's no good answers that I know of, other than like specify. I do like the idea. I think there is more cleanliness to the idea of having this local proxy, and then nodes connect through a single endpoint, and then that proxy does the magic for you. That's very similar to how Mesos works. It's actually, they deploy an HA proxy with every node, and that's also how they do their service magic. So I'm not opposed to some of this, but I think gating it behind a feature and who's going to be executing it and doing the reviews is important. The logistics behind it. So we need a doc that outlines this piece, right? Just so we're not like randomly coding nonsense, right?
I think that exists already in the doc that I wrote that now is in Fabrizio's doc.
I think that thing's getting too conflated. I think we should probably separate it out into two separate bits. One is the etcd bit, like we should have a metadoc, an etcd bit, and here's the other talking about stuff, how to connect to the masters. Does that seem legit? Because otherwise we're going to have a monster document.
Well, everything's in the same place right now, but they are in different sections, kind of logically grouped.
Why don't I review that today and get all the comments in? Because I've only went through sections of the document. I haven't gone through it in detail. It's 23 pages long.
Yeah. That's why I said like we should get it lighter.
Yeah.
Nobody has time to go through it all. Otherwise.
Well, I'll force myself to have time to do it once at least.
But I think that clean up the document is kind of easy now because we simplify the story around etcd and around the topic of master discovery. We have let me say reference story, which is the external load balancer. We can quote the fact that we are working, experimenting on a, let me say, embedded load balancing system, call it whatever, but this will be developed in another doc, if I got it right. And then we can move also in a separated document or leave in the original document all the implementation detail written by Lucas about phases or what to change. These are not design doc, these are implementation doc, if you agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So Robert, are you gonna ping Mike on the details for?
Sorry, I think that there is, okay, we are really doing progress today. I think that there is one last topic which has more than one option in the proposal, which is the how to move certificates from A to B.
I think so. The latest thing was to use secrets, and that will get handled automatically by the kubelets.
Okay, so the CRR discussion is an alternative that we are not implementing now.
Not if we're going with the CD operator now.
Okay, great. But also for the cluster certificates, we are using secrets.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll try to go with that one first. Lock secrets down as much as we can. See how secure it is at the end of the day, and let users test. Then see, like, is this something we're confident in promoting to beta, or do we have to start over? But at the current situation, we're in a dead end anyway if we're not doing this, right? So we're trying to get something instead of nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, and Robert, on did you find the PR links or whatever issue?
No, I haven't. Can you ping me in Slack after the meeting, and I'll find out.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, before we run out of time, Fabrizio, is the document, the HA document you've been authoring, is that ready for review, or are we waiting for you to finish cleaning it up?
We should clean it up first, and I'll help, and Tim. I guess.
Yep, I'm going to go through it today because it's got a bunch of state and information that talks about both options, and we should probably just say, like, we punt to option A or B and other things.
And you could put like alternatives considered down at the bottom, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
So people don't say, "Oh, why didn't you think of this?" You say, like, it's down below.
Yep.
Yeah, but we should instead of highlighting all options after each other, we should focus on the three we're targeting right now, and then punt everything down. Because right now we have a lot of context in the middle of the doc that is not relevant to what we're trying to do.
Okay, yeah, because there are a couple of people I want to send it to have them take a look, and so I will wait until I hear from you that it's ready for a wider audience.
Okay, fine for me to clean up the document.
I think we've hit time. So what I'll do today and tomorrow is review the doc. My other work is done now, at least temporarily. So I'll be able to focus on just this stuff, and I'll poke some other folks internally too to see what their opinions are.
Yeah, and we'll help Jamie with the reviews, rebasing if needed.
Yep, I'll poke them on Slack too as well, and I'll try to get some testing cycles on this because I want to.
Yeah.
I want to test a lot more earlier in the cycle this round because last iteration was another. I don't know. I'm not going to trust anything until 1.8.2 is released again. 1.8.0 is not the best vintage. So I'll leave that for discussion maybe until next week.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.